Grimora.
I arrived at Northwood Sleep Research Center in Washington State at the end of December. The facility was located on the edge of a large forest, with no nearby towns or traffic. The building was modern from the outside, but the interior felt older, quiet, and underlit, as if most of the rooms were unused. I signed a 3-week volunteer contract to participate in a study about sleep cycles and overnight monitoring. The coordinator, Dr. Meredith Hale, explained that the program focused on evaluating brain responses during deep sleep. She spoke with a controlled, calm tone and never changed expression while describing the procedure. Each volunteer stayed in a private room with sensors placed on the scalp, chest, and wrists. Cameras recorded all activity during sleep. A nurse monitored everything from a control room behind soundproof glass. The first night felt uneventful. I lay in the narrow bed and listened to the quiet hum of the equipment. The walls were painted light gray, and the ceiling held a single dim light that never fully turned off. The air was cold and still. At some point during the night, I woke up, unable to move. Not fully awake, not asleep. My eyes were open, but my body did not respond. I stared upward and waited for movement to return. I could hear the soft electrical hum of the monitoring devices. Then I heard breathing in the room. Not my breathing. Something slower, controlled, steady, coming from the far corner near the ceiling. I tried to turn my head, but my body remained completely still. The breathing continued for several seconds. Then it stopped. I felt a weight pressing lightly against the foot of the bed. Not heavy, just enough to tighten the air around my legs. The pressure moved slowly up toward my chest, inch by inch, without sound. I could see nothing but the ceiling and the faint reflection of machinery lights on the wall. The pressure stopped at the center of my chest and remained there, unmoving. A faint voice spoke close to my ear, low, flat, controlled. "Do not open your eyes." I could not tell if the voice was inside the room or inside my mind. The pressure on my chest increased slightly, then lifted suddenly. The paralysis released and I sat up quickly. The room was empty. The equipment lights blinked steadily. The door remained closed. In the morning, Dr. Hale reviewed my data on the screen. She watched the recording without expression. The footage showed me lying still the entire time. Nothing entered the room. She said only one sentence in a flat tone. "You experienced typical paralysis response. It is normal." But the way she looked at the monitors suggested she knew more than she would say. When I returned to my room that night, the bed felt colder and the air heavier. The lights dimmed, the sensors activated, and at exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke again, unable to move. This time I heard footsteps inside the room, slow, even, close. The pressure returned to my chest. The same voice spoke again, closer than before. "Do not look at me yet." And the room fell silent.
The silence in the room after the voice faded felt dense and heavy. My body remained still, fixed in place, unable to respond to any command. The ceiling light above me glowed dimly, casting a pale reflection across the smooth surface of the wall. I listened to the slow electronic hum from the monitoring equipment beside the bed. The footsteps continued. They moved closer to the side of the bed. Each step pressed gently against the floor in a steady rhythm, controlled and deliberate, without variation. I could not turn my head to see where they stopped. My eyes remained fixed forward. The pressure on my chest returned, slow and consistent. It spread across my ribs in a gradual movement, like hands pressing downward through a thick layer of air. My breathing slowed, as if the room itself reduced the amount of air available. The voice returned near my ear. The tone was quiet and even, without change in pitch. Not yet. The room held stillness for several seconds. The pressure lifted from my chest. The paralysis ended suddenly, and I sat up, upright. I waited without moving. The room was unchanged. The door remained closed. The equipment lights blinked in steady pattern. I reported the event the next morning. Dr. Hale stood at the monitor, reviewing the recording. Her expression did not shift. No movement occurred in your room during the night. Your sensors showed elevated brain response and temporary sleep disruption. The experience was internal. She marked something on a clipboard without looking up. The nurse beside her avoided meeting my eyes. The monitor screen displayed a graph showing patterns that rose sharply at 2:14 a.m., then dropped again. When I asked if other participants had reported similar experiences, Dr. Hale answered with a short, controlled sentence. "Sleep paralysis is common. You may continue without concern." The way she delivered the line suggested rehearsed repetition, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what I described. During the afternoon break, I met another participant in the hallway. His name was Daniel, a quiet man who moved slowly and kept his hands in the pockets of his lab coat. He stopped near me and spoke in a low, controlled voice. "It happened to you last night." I did not respond immediately. He continued, "The same time, always the same time. The voice arrives first, then the pressure, then the steps." I asked how long he had been part of the study. His answer was short, 2 weeks. He looked toward the security camera positioned high on the wall and lowered his voice further. "The cameras do not show anything. The audio records nothing. They already know that." I waited for him to continue. He stood still for several seconds. "Do not open your eyes when you hear the voice. If you look before it is ready, you will not wake up." The nurse approached from the end of the hallway, and Daniel stepped away without another word. That night, I entered the sleep chamber again. The walls felt closer than before. The sensors aligned across my chest and head. The door sealed with the same quiet sound. I lay still on the bed, listening to the soft mechanical hum. The dim ceiling light remained unchanged. My breathing matched the quiet rhythm of the machines nearby. At 2:14 a.m., the paralysis returned. I opened my eyes. My body did not respond. I heard the footsteps again, slow and even, moving from the far corner toward the bed. The sound carried weight across the floor, steady and purposeful. The pressure touched my chest again, but this time it increased further. My breathing tightened. The temperature in the room shifted downward. The air felt colder at the edges of the bed. The voice returned, positioned directly beside my ear. "Do not look at me." The footsteps stopped at the side of the bed. I could sense the shape of someone standing there, though I could not see any figure. The presence remained motionless, waiting. Then something pressed against my hand. Not skin, not fabric. Something colder than the room, smooth and still, pressed lightly against my fingers. The contact remained steady, without movement. The voice spoke again, quieter than before. "Tomorrow night, we move closer." The pressure lifted from my chest. The presence withdrew slowly. The footsteps receded across the room and faded into silence. The paralysis released, and I sat upright. The equipment lights blinked in steady rhythm. The room remained empty. The clock on the wall showed 2:17 a.m.
The day moved slowly. The hallways of the Northwood facility felt quieter than usual. Doors remained closed. Staff members walked with controlled steps and avoided conversation. Several monitors in the common area displayed blank screens with no data. The atmosphere carried a stillness that suggested something anticipated rather than accidental. During lunch break, I sat alone near the end of the dining hall. Daniel approached and sat across from me without speaking at first. His posture was tense, his hands unmoving on the surface of the table. He looked around the room once before speaking quietly. They moved closer last night. I felt something standing right beside me. I could not move. I could not see it. It waited for a long time. He paused and lowered his gaze. When it touched my arm, my heart stopped for 3 seconds. The monitor alarms activated. The nurse said it was an electrical misread. It was not. I waited without responding. He continued, "It will touch you again tonight. It learns quickly. It watches how you breathe. It waits for your body to stop resisting." He looked toward the observation window, where staff watched from behind soundproof glass. They know what is happening. This study is not about sleep. He stood and walked away without explaining further. When evening arrived, I returned to my assigned room. The ceiling light remained dim and steady. The sensors attached to my chest and arms felt colder than before. The machine next to the bed pulsed with a slow, repeating tone that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. At 2:14 a.m., paralysis returned precisely on time. My eyes opened. My body did not respond. The hum of the monitoring equipment remained unchanged. The footsteps began again, not from the corner this time, from directly beside the bed. The first step pressed against the floor with slow, deliberate weight. Then another, then a pause. The sound did not echo. It absorbed into the air as if the room itself swallowed the sound. The presence stood close enough that I could sense displacement in the air around my face. The pressure settled onto my chest again, heavier than the night before. Breathing became slow and narrow. The voice returned next to my ear, calm, flat, without emotion. "Do not try to speak." The mattress shifted slightly, as if weight lowered onto the surface near my feet. Something cold brushed against my left hand slowly, tracing along the line of my fingers. The contact remained steady. The voice continued, "We were here before you. We did not wake up. We cannot leave until someone sees us." The pressure increased. Breathing thinned further. "Do not open your eyes until I tell you." The footsteps moved again, circling around the bed in slow, even motion. I listened to each step as it traced a controlled path around the frame. The air temperature dropped further. The ceiling light flickered once. Then the presence stopped at the head of the bed. The voice shifted position. It now came from above me rather than beside me. "You heard us. You did not look. That is why you are still here." The pressure on my chest lifted abruptly. The paralysis ended. I sat upright and looked around the room. No one stood there. The door remained locked from the outside. The equipment lights blinked in their regular pattern. The clock displayed 2:19 a.m. The silence in the room carried weight, as if something remained unseen only a short distance away. When morning arrived, Dr. Hale reviewed the recording again. Her expression remained unchanged. She closed the file without discussion. The nurse watching beside her spoke without meeting my eyes. The others did not return this morning. I asked what she meant. She answered in a controlled tone. 3 participants did not wake up. Their sensors showed stable heartbeat and brain function. Their bodies would not respond.
They are still breathing, but they will not wake." She stepped away quickly. Daniel approached later in the hallway. His voice was lower than before. "Tomorrow night it will speak your name. Do not answer. If you answer, you will not open your eyes again." He walked away without waiting for a response. When night arrived, I returned to the room. The sensors connected, the lights dimmed. I closed my eyes and waited for the exact moment. 2:14 a.m. The paralysis returned. The voice arrived instantly, closer than ever. "Do not look yet," and the pressure began again.
The pressure on my chest increased gradually, not violent, controlled. Each second, the weight deepened in steady increments. My lungs adjusted to smaller amounts of air. My heartbeat slowed to an even rhythm, matching the soft pulse from the monitor beside the bed. The footsteps circled the bed again. The sound was slower than the previous night. Each step held a long pause, as if the presence measured distance between movements. The temperature in the room lowered further. The ceiling light dimmed until only a faint outline remained visible above me. The voice returned, calm, flat, without variation. "We stayed where they left us." The sound came from directly above my face now. I could not move my eyes or turn my head. The paralysis held without change. The air thickened around me, as if the space between the walls and the bed compressed. The mattress shifted, weight lowered beside me. The frame creaked slightly under the distribution of pressure. Something touched my left shoulder with steady contact. Not cold, like before, not warm, neutral, still. The voice continued. "We waited in the dark. We called for them. They did not come." The pressure on my chest lifted slowly. My breathing returned to full range, though my body remained still. The presence stayed close. The air did not move. The voice shifted again, closer to my ear than any previous night. "Open your eyes now." The paralysis released instantly. I opened my eyes slowly. The ceiling light flickered once and held steady. A figure stood at the foot of the bed. The form was human-shaped, but without clear detail. A tall outline, motionless, defined only by absence of light. No facial features, no visible edges, only a silhouette darker than the space around it. The figure did not shift or move. The room held complete silence. The presence remained still for several seconds. Then the figure leaned forward by a slight degree, enough to change the shape of the shadow. The voice spoke again, but now it came from the direction of the figure rather than beside me. "You see us now?" The figure stepped closer. The movement was slow and even. Each step maintained the same measured pace. When it stopped, it stood beside the bed, within arm's reach. The surface of the shadow changed, not texture, density. The edges sharpened slightly, revealing faint details across the outline of a face. Not eyes, not mouth, just the faint impression of something once human. The voice lowered. "We were 12. 3 remain awake. The rest cannot move. They breathe without sound. They wait without time." The figure remained still. "Do not speak when I say your name. If you speak, you will stay with us." The silhouette moved a fraction closer. The air around my face cooled further. My breath slowed without choice. The voice spoke a single word. "My name." The room held stillness without interruption. I did not answer. The figure remained motionless. The voice continued. "Tomorrow night we ask again. The last night. The door will open. If you stand, you will see what they did. If you refuse, you will join the others." The figure stepped backward, moving with the same steady rhythm.
The shape dimmed gradually until only faint outline remained. Then it faded completely. The ceiling light brightened to normal level. The paralysis ended fully. I sat upright slowly. The clock on the wall displayed 2:21 a.m. The room was empty. In the morning, the hallway outside the chamber was silent. Several staff members stood near the elevator speaking in low, controlled tones. The nurse who monitored the sessions avoided eye contact. I asked where Daniel was. She answered with a single, quiet sentence. "He did not wake." She walked away quickly. Dr. Hale entered the hallway and locked the observation control room. She spoke without pause and without expression. "Tonight is your last session. After that, the study concludes." She handed me a sealed envelope with no writing on the front. "Do not open this until after the final night." She walked away without further explanation. The building felt heavier than before. The silence moved through the rooms as if something unseen traveled beneath the floor. When night arrived, I lay on the bed without closing my eyes. The sensors activated. The lights dimmed. The air changed. 2:14 a.m. The paralysis returned instantly. The voice arrived without delay. "Stand when I call you." And the room fell still.
The room held complete stillness after the voice finished speaking. My body remained paralyzed, fixed to the bed without response. The ceiling light above me dimmed further until only a faint outline of the fixture remained visible. The air thickened and felt heavier to breathe, as though the space around my chest tightened slowly with gradual pressure. The footsteps began again, not inside the room, outside the door, slow and steady. Each step pressed against the hallway floor in long intervals, approaching the chamber with controlled rhythm. The sound stopped directly outside the door. The door unlocked by itself. The electronic bolt disengaged with a soft mechanical click. The door opened a few centimeters. A narrow beam of dim hallway light cut across the floor in a straight line. The space beyond remained silent. The voice returned, low and even, coming from inside the room rather than outside it. "Stand now." The paralysis released completely. I sat up slowly and placed my feet on the cold floor. I stood without resistance. The air remained heavy, but my body responded normally. The door opened further with a slow, continuous movement. No wind, no visible force. It continued until the hallway stood fully visible beyond the frame. The overhead lights outside flickered with irregular pulse patterns, shifting between pale white and dull gray. The voice continued, now positioned near my shoulder, though nothing stood there. "Walk with me." I stepped into the hallway. The floor felt colder than the room. The silence stretched in long, even intervals. No staff movements, no mechanical noise, no distant conversation. The facility felt vacant. The hallway lights dimmed behind me and brightened ahead, guiding a path toward the research wing. The voice moved with me, speaking in quiet fragments. We did not sleep. They watched us. They waited for the signal to fail. The air temperature lowered further as I reached the end of the corridor. A large, reinforced door marked with red warning labels stood closed. The walls surrounding it appeared older than the rest of the building, constructed with darker material and thick bolts. The voice continued. They locked us inside when the alarms activated. Smoke filled the room. We called them. We waited for response. They silenced the line. A faint electronic tone sounded from within the sealed room. A steady pulse repeated at regular intervals. 3 short tones followed by a long pause. The same pattern I heard in the sleep chamber before the voice appeared. The door unlocked by itself. A heavy metal latch slid open. The voice spoke again. "Do not stop walking." I pushed the door slowly. It opened into a larger, dark room lit only by a row of weak red emergency lights along the walls.
The space contained 12 identical beds arranged in 2 parallel rows. 11 were occupied. Bodies lay flat and perfectly still, eyes open, breathing shallow, no movement visible beyond slight chest rise. Sensors attached to their heads and arms blinked in slow, controlled rhythm. All remained alive but unresponsive. The voice spoke beside me. "They are here. They are waiting. They hear you." The 12th bed stood empty. A single figure sat upright in a chair beside it. Daniel. His head remained tilted slightly downward, his eyes open without blinking. His hands rested on his legs. His body did not move. The voice lowered further. They called for help that night. The fire reached the sealed door before they could escape. They trusted the ones watching them. They believed they would return. They did not. I looked toward the emergency lights along the far wall. The metal surface beneath them displayed long, dark burn patterns, as though fire scorched the steel and cooled long ago. The voice spoke again. "Say nothing until I ask. If you speak too soon, you will not wake again." The air stilled. The footsteps returned from behind me, slow, even, heavy, crossing the threshold into the room, moving closer. The voice shifted position to my right ear. "When I speak your name, you will stand in the empty bed. If you refuse, you will join the others. It is the last night. You must choose." The footsteps stopped, one arm's length behind me. The lights flickered once. The voice waited. Then it spoke one single word. My name. The silence that followed held complete weight. I did not move. The presence remained behind me without change. The voice spoke again. "Tomorrow, you will see everything." The lights brightened sharply for a moment. The room disappeared. I found myself standing alone in the empty hallway. The door behind me closed once more. The clock on the wall displayed 2:26 a.m. The silence in the building carried tension like stretched wire. One final night remained. The truth waited behind the sealed door.
The day moved without sound through the facility. Doors remained closed. The research staff passed through the halls without speaking. Their movements appeared slower than before, as though something weighed against them. The atmosphere inside the building felt compressed, holding pressure that shifted through each corridor. I walked past the observation room. The interior lights were turned off and the blinds drawn shut from the inside. No equipment screens were active. No monitors displayed data. Chairs were pushed slightly away from the consoles, as if the room had been left in haste. The nurse who monitored previous sessions stood near the elevators, holding a clipboard. She looked toward the floor, not meeting my eyes. When I approached, she spoke quietly, her voice controlled and even. "They will not stop it now. The last night cannot be interrupted. You should not return to the room." I asked what would happen if I left the building. She continued without raising her eyes. "The doors are locked. They sealed them before sunrise." I waited. She added one more sentence. "They knew this would happen again. They prepared for it. They do not intend to change it." She stepped away and entered the stairwell without looking back. The hall felt colder as the day progressed. The lights flickered at regular intervals, dimming for seconds at a time. The mechanical hum from the monitoring equipment throughout the building slowed and deepened in tone. At sunset, a faint vibration moved through the floor, steady and continuous. The pressure in the air shifted downward, tightening across my shoulders and chest. I returned to the sleep chamber and sat on the edge of the bed. The sensors activated on their own. The overhead light dimmed gradually to a colorless, low tone. The building fell into complete silence. 2:14 a.m. Paralysis returned without warning. My eyes opened. My body remained still. The ceiling light flickered once and held. The footsteps entered the room immediately. No pause, no hesitation. They crossed the floor in a continuous rhythm and stopped beside the bed. The pressure touched my chest but did not increase. A steady contact held my body still. The presence stood at the side of the bed as though waiting for the next signal. The voice spoke close to my ear, calm and even. "Stand now." The paralysis released in a single shift. I sat up and stepped to the floor. The presence remained near my left side, though nothing could be seen. The door opened without sound. The hallway lights pulsed softly, guiding the path toward the sealed trauma wing. The vibration through the floor increased slightly, as if machinery operated somewhere beneath the building. The voice continued as I walked. They locked the door and left us inside. The fire reached the ceiling. The smoke filled the air. The alarms did not bring anyone. We waited for the call to continue. They cut the signal. We reached the door marked with red warning paint. It opened before I touched the handle. The room appeared brighter than the night before. White lights illuminated the beds clearly. The 11 bodies remained unmoving, eyes open, breathing slow and steady without change. The sensors blinked in synchronized rhythm. Daniel remained seated in the chair at the empty bed, posture unchanged, gaze unfocused. The voice spoke from behind me. They recorded everything. They watched us until the end. The call reached them. They listened. They chose to disconnect the line. The overhead speakers activated. A recording played through the room. Not voice, static, then faint breathing, then a short repeating tone, the same 3-note pattern from the previous nights. The voice continued. They locked the room and left us inside. They waited until the fire consumed the equipment. They saved the building. They left us to stay here. The presence moved closer. I could sense cold air shifting against the side of my face. You were not chosen by them. You were chosen by us. We called you because you heard us. The footsteps moved toward the empty bed. The mattress compressed slightly as weight lowered onto it. The pressure on my chest increased again, steady and controlled. The voice lowered. "Lie down." I did not move. The pressure increased further, guiding my body backward. I lay on the empty bed without resistance. Sensors fastened themselves around my arms and chest without human hands touching them. The monitor lights brightened and aligned in a perfect synchronized pattern. The pressure lifted. Paralysis returned instantly. The ceiling lights dimmed until the room held only faint silhouettes. The voice spoke beside my ear. "When you close your eyes, you will see what happened. When you open them, you will choose what remains. You are the bridge between the living and the ones who stayed." The room held stillness. The voice whispered a final instruction. "Close your eyes now." I closed my eyes. The lights went out. The building fell silent.
Darkness pressed against my eyes with steady weight. The silence held in the room without movement. My breathing slowed to an even rhythm. The mattress beneath me felt cold and motionless. The paralysis remained fixed, holding my body in place. A sound formed slowly in the darkness. Not footsteps, not voice, a low, continuous tone, rising from below the floor, vibrating through the mattress and into my chest. The tone deepened and expanded until the space around me felt suspended. Light appeared behind my closed eyes, not brightness, a faint, dull glow forming shapes without edges. The scene shifted into view as though rising through deep water. I saw a room identical to the one I lay in now, 12 beds arranged in 2 straight rows. The overhead lights glowed white and steady. Figures moved between the beds, wearing medical gowns and holding clipboards. Their movements were calm and controlled. No urgency, no confusion. A monitoring alarm sounded once, sharp and brief. Smoke appeared near the ceiling, drifting downward in thin lines. The staff continued working without reaction. The alarm repeated, louder. The smoke thickened and spread across the upper walls. One of the figures reached toward a panel on the wall and pressed a button. The alarm silenced. The smoke continued to fill the room. None of them opened the door. The scene shifted closer. The 12 patients lay still in their beds, eyes open, breathing rapidly. Hands tightened against the mattress. The monitors flashed red indicators. The figures in medical gowns backed away slowly and exited the room, closing the door behind them. The smoke thickened. The lights flickered. The flames reached the ceiling panels. The patients tried to lift their heads, but their bodies did not respond. Their eyes widened. Their chests lifted sharply, and then slowed. The view turned toward the far corner of the room. A single emergency telephone hung mounted to the wall. A patient reached toward the receiver with trembling hand. He lifted it slowly and pressed it to his ear. His lips moved without sound. His throat tightened with effort. He listened. The scene widened. In another room, separated by glass, the staff stood watching the monitors. One woman held a telephone receiver against her ear. She listened with calm expression. The patient spoke again. The line connected. He struggled to force breath into words. The woman pressed a button on the control board. The call ended. The line disconnected. The patient released the receiver. The flames reached the beds. The scene dissolved into white light. The light faded. I opened my eyes. The room around me returned. The bodies in the beds remained still, breathing slowly. Daniel sat motionless in the chair, head slightly lowered. The sensors blinked in perfect rhythm. The voice spoke next to my ear, calm, controlled. You see what they did. You see why we stayed. The pressure on my chest lifted completely. The paralysis ended. I stood from the bed. The presence remained near me, though nothing appeared in front of my eyes. The voice continued, You choose now. If you speak, we leave this place. If you remain silent, we stay here forever. The room held complete stillness. I looked at the bodies in the beds. I looked at the sealed door. The lights flickered once. I spoke a single sentence with flat, steady tone. The call continues now. The overhead speakers activated. The static returned. The breathing returned. Then the tone sequence repeated. 3 notes, silence, 3 notes, silence. The emergency lights shut off. The room darkened completely. The air pressure changed as if something pulled outward through the walls. When the lights returned, the beds were empty. The equipment remained. The sensors still blinked without connection. The chair sat undisturbed. The room felt lighter, as though tension dissolved from the air. I walked into the hallway. The building lights glowed steady.
The vibration beneath the floor stopped. The locked doors opened without resistance. The path to the exit felt clear and open. Outside, the night sky remained still. The forest surrounding the facility did not move. The silence carried no weight. At sunrise, I reached the nearest town and entered a small diner near the highway. The television above the counter displayed a local news report. The reporter stood in front of the Northwood Research Building. The facility is scheduled for permanent closure this week. Records show the building remained unopened since a fire incident many years ago. Officials state that no personnel have worked inside since that time. The screen showed footage of the building in daylight. The windows were boarded. The entrance was sealed with chains. No lights showed through the glass. The reporter continued. The original tragedy involved 12 research volunteers who died during a containment failure. Their bodies were never recovered. All records of the event remain sealed. The broadcast ended. I placed my hands against the counter. The staff moved normally around the room. The space felt ordinary. The phone on the wall behind the counter rang once. A single tone, sharp and short. No one moved to answer it. The ringing stopped. The diner returned to silence. I stepped outside and walked toward the empty street. The air felt lighter than before. The quiet held no weight. The call had finished. The voices were gone. The night no longer waited.